Hey everybody, how you doing? Tom Barnes here. Stories from the 78. When you think of music cities, Nashville gets mentioned, New York, of course, LA, Chicago not that much for some reason, but we have had a lot of music roll through this city, going all the way back to like Chess Records, Wax Trax Records, and of course, the record company that put like alt country or Americana music on the map. That is Bloodshot Records. Started off in the mid 90s from a dude from Detroit who worked in like the promotion, promoter scene, putting on shows, seeing how bands got screwed over by record companies, came to Chicago, started Bloodshot Records in like the mid 90s, and really put a freaking star on the city of Chicago for great music labels. They've been around all the way up until about the pandemic, where he sold off the place, started something new, but he put it all down in this great book. And I'm talking, he is Rob Miller, who started Bloodshot Records, where the hours are long and the pay is low. But fantastic. It used to be, I believe, right off of like Ravenswood Avenue in like the Lincoln Square, Ravenswood area. But I'll let Rob explain. How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
It's been I don't know if you remember meeting, but we did meet quite a few years ago. I worked at WGN, where I brought Anna Belival and the Around Town crew to Bloodshot Records to like do a whole tour of the space. And this would have been probably like 2012, maybe somewhere around there. But that was my first time there. But I still have records you gave me from that tour back then. But it was a lot of fun. Probably don't remember because you probably did that a lot with people
Well, and
constantly coming through.
when people with film crews show up, I typically go blank into a kind of a terror, so, and block it all out.
I get that. Yeah, they could be a bit much. Those people, including myself, I suppose, and all the TV crews. But it's been a few years since you were at the helm of Bloodshot. What are you up to these days besides writing books about your experience?
Well, that's pretty much it. I mean, to the general public, the end probably seemed quick. But for me, there was a lot of, the lawyers and the accountants all had to get paid, and that took quite some time to wrap up. So, between that and writing the book, I didn't really have much brain space for doing much else.
Was it cathartic with the writing of the book and also like the final steps of paying the lawyers, paying all that, like just being done with it, but also writing the book and the process of like fully like getting it out of you?
To some degree, it was a help to remind me why I did it in the first place. Because the end was just so pointless and poisonous and unnecessary that it was easy to forget why I got into music in the first place, or why it was so important to me. And also with the isolation that came with COVID, it was a reminder of the importance of community. Mm-hmm. And that's what I found in my early days of finding punk rock, and then the idea of the label as well was just all about that community.
Yeah, you started off, are you from Detroit? Is that right?
Yeah.
And so you start off like, running shows in Detroit. So, and you saw the way that bands were treated by labels or by other venues and so on and so forth. So where did it come to your mind where like, I'm going to start a label, because it's not like that's an easy thing to do, or maybe it was for you. I don't know. But that's why we're talking.
It is. I mean, in the early 90s in Detroit, in Chicago, after I'd fled Detroit and come to Chicago, there was just all these labels happening: Touch and Go and Thrill Jockey and Minty Fresh and Johann's Face. And it just seemed like if anyone had a band or a buddy's band or their own band and they wanted to put it out, the idea of a label through punk rock had been demystified. Like, you could just start a label and
go do it.
Looked around the city and there were just labels everywhere. So I was like, well, here are these bands that we thought needed some kind of documentation. Why not start a label? So on the one hand, it's just like you pony up a little pile of money, you press up CDs, and poof, you're a label. So there was really no, there was no hierarchy, there was no staff, there was no office tower with chrome furniture and potted plants and things like that. It was just do it.
What do you miss the most about running a label?
that
In its heyday. I should say in its heyday.
that feeling of discovery and the feeling of connection when you hear something that hits you in a way that you've never been hit before, or when you are in a club presenting this band to a crowd who has never heard of them, never seen them, and you feel the change in the room happening where all of a sudden people are getting it. And there's that moment of revelation that just carries you. It carried me for, all those dark times where you're just filling in Excel spreadsheets or wrangling with lawyers or stuff, like those moments at the Empty Bottle or at the Hideout or at Lounge X that were just elevating.
I imagine it was, I mean, probably some people can attribute it to like almost having a high, like, like having something like that where you're like almost like vindication, like, I fucking knew it. I knew it. I knew it that these guys would be great. And look at this crowd. Look what they're doing.
I don't know if it's vindication, but yeah, a little bit of affirmation. Like, okay, I'm not alone in thinking this band, this moment is incredible. Because a lot of the time in the office, you are by yourself, or you're in your bubble with the staff, and you think, well, of course this is going to do well, and it doesn't. So you're like, am I losing my mind? And then you have one of those moments at our showcase at South by Southwest or something where people are just losing their minds, and the artist comes off and you can see it in their eyes. They're like, wow, that was amazing. So yeah, that, it is a bit like a high. Yeah.
Did you have vindication perhaps when, I'm sure there were naysayers when you wanted to start your own label in Chicago versus, Nashville or New York or LA or wherever. Did you have any vindication when you were like, oh, I think we got something here, man? Like people are starting to call this music like Americana or the other adjectives they describe the music that you guys, some like you found, like bands like Old 97s or all those bands in that realm. Like was there where you're like, yeah, like I told you guys?
I was too busy moving forward to worry about what other people said.
Oh, right on. I like that answer.
Because yeah, early on, I mean, doing roots inflected punk music out of Chicago made no sense on paper. And being in Chicago allowed us that freedom to exist outside of the typical music power structures. So they were far enough away from us geographically that if they said this is dumb or this will never work, they were far enough away that we could just ignore them and just carry on. And that was the whole punk ideal, was you can't do this, and be like, well, why not?
Mm-hmm. I heard a very similar story when I was talking to some of the folks that worked at Wax Trax Records. Same type of thing. Like, yeah, why is that? Like, why in Chicago is this going on? And they were like, well, fuck off. Why not? Like, like this is what we do. This is just, these are, it just kind of all came together. I mean, you got to have a little bit of a lot to make a great recipe, right?
Or the freedom to try things. And if they fail, such a low bar for entry that if it failed, you just did something else. You moved on, or you honed what you were doing. People could try projects here. And if they sucked, then they do something else. I mean, it's a Tuesday night at the Empty Bottle. Who cares? It's not like LA or Nashville or New York where there was like a pay to play or A&R people from major labels looking over your shoulder, judging you, or like, hey, can we make money off of this? Chicago was cheap. It was easy. There were the opportunities to just try things, blow them up, and start over.
Do you look back on something like when you were trying things or in blowing things up or pushing the envelope? Is there something that sticks out in your mind where you're like, oh, yeah, this is the thing that I've been looking for?
I think maybe the first Old 97s album release show at the Empty Bottle, when there was a line down the block and people were just wedged in there dangerously so, that people were just coming up to me going, wow, this is good. I hate country music, but I like this. And I'm like, I hate country music too. That's why we're doing this, you know. That was a time where I was within the city that I was like, yeah, this we might be onto something.
Yeah, was it too country for punk and too punk for country type of, is that
Yeah,
the, like,
exactly.
that's where you guys kind of settled in, right?
Right. Yeah. Country mass media had wanted nothing to do with us. And the whole alternative rock, alternative nation thing, they're like, we hate country. And I was like, yeah, I get it. That's why we came up with it. Excuse me. That's why we came up with insurgent country, was to kind of soften the C word so that
Mhm.
people could kind of maybe get the renegade edge to it.
And Chicago does have like this thirst for country-ish even music. I mean, I've heard from folks from like Nashville even, where they're like, wow, outside of Nashville, like Chicago's a huge market for us at a time. I don't know if that's the case anymore, because New York at the time did not have, I don't believe New York or LA had country stations, but Chicago did. And it was like this huge draw. Like that's why like the Windy City Smokeout is such a big deal. Like Chicago does love its country music. And so I feel like what you were saying earlier, we're also a little bit more of like, all right, let's hear it. We'll let you know if it sucks. Like that's very much Chicago versus somebody crapping all over it right away.
Yeah. And counterpoint, if you're talking about US 99 or something like that, it was terrible country music. It was to country
Yeah.
music what REO Speedwagon was to rock and
Rockin',
roll,
yeah.
It was garbage. It was unlistenable. So that wasn't really a market we were going for in the first place.
Mhm.
But I will say that before I moved here, and even before I started the label, I didn't know about the history of country music in Chicago, how far back it went, how many honky tonks there were. I didn't know about the barn dance, all this history. So we did tap into something that may have been just like lying dormant in the mud for, a couple of decades.
Well, and at the end of the day, good music's good music, and it will eventually, hopefully, find people either
Well,
in that.
I would like to believe that the music industry is a meritocracy, but it is not.
Well, that's my next. So, music now, like if you were, how old were you when you started Bloodshot?
28.
So, if you were 28 today, would you even consider starting a record label? Knowing what you knew
Oh,
then?
knowing what I know now, absolutely not.
No.
I had no idea how fully it absorbs your life. And a lot of the things we did back then, we did because we didn't know any better. Now, knowing better, there's being an idiot is incredibly liberating,
That's a great line. That's a great T-shirt.
I'm
Well,
gonna translate it into Latin and have it chiseled onto my tombstone.
there you go. What would be like when you think back though? You're like, like why did I do it that way? Because I read a little bit about. I read the book, and there's parts in there where like you were specifically talking after like South by Southwest about. It was so great. It was so fun, and then like immediately you're like, now I got to do all this. Is
Right.
that kind of what you're talking about? Like not enjoying the moments as they happen because you're always moving forward, or is it just the soul sucking that machine that always wants more?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I was of the personality type that could enjoy things in the moment more. But yeah, I was so focused on this great thing happened. What do I do with that moving forward right now? Because it might not be there. I never took our existence for granted. And so maybe certain decisions were made or weren't made because I was like, well, we're not going to be around next year anyway. Like literally every South by Southwest, our huge party, I would think, well, this is the last one. So why plan ahead for 3 to 5 years out,
Well, until
And
it was
and
the
in
last.
that regard, some mistakes were made that I should have thought further ahead, but that seemed presumptuous.
Well, I mean, and it kind of speaks to like the music industry now. I feel even when I've interviewed a lot of artists who it's just the difference between now and maybe even 10 years ago is different for artists in the music industry and how who makes the money, where does it go? I mean, what are your thoughts on like what Spotify has done to the music scene overall, or streaming services like Spotify?
How much time do we have?
As much as it needs to be.
Spotify and streaming services provide a way for people to consume music thoughtlessly and at almost no cost in a way that they think they're not being pirates. Napster was free. You were ripping people off on its face. This, you're like, well, I'm paying for Spotify. It's, it's micro pennies. If you use Spotify to expose yourself to new music, and then you follow that up with supporting the artist directly, then that's a win. I'm not pretending we can put the technological genie back in the bottle, or that we should, because when I was growing up, if you were a weird kid, in Fargo, North Dakota or something, where you didn't have access to a good record store or a good radio station, you were screwed. Now you have access to this music, this vast repository of music, this spectrum, this incredible spectrum of sounds. But it's not really helping the artists, especially if it's just, the algorithm is just kind of nudging you in the similar direction, but you're never going to have an epiphany listening to Spotify.
No, because it's kind of just
the same. It's just kind of
just the same,
nudging you in the same direction.
Hell, you even hear, if you listen long enough, you'll hear the same song where you're like, I just heard that song. What the hell?
Yeah. I mean, what Spotify cannot replace going into a used record store. And just based on how freaking hot Tina Turner was in the late 60s on the album cover, buying an Ike and Tina record and having your mind blown by it,
Sexiest legs and rock and roll.
Sexiest.
And voice too.
Heels to top,
yeah.
And or like walking in one day to a punk club, like, oh, here's this band, the Bad Brains, never heard of them.
Oh yeah.
And just having your mind melted with that. Like Spotify will never do that to you. Going to Lollapalooza will never do that for you. So it's it serves its place, but in some ways it diminishes. It's a race to the bottom for devaluing art.
So then how does the music industry, like, when does it hit rock bottom to where that becomes something again? Is that just when kids and a little bit older kids are like, I'm tired of this, I want to go into a record store, which is happening, but not as young as maybe people like in their late 20s are rediscovering records, but are they really, or are they just collecting them?
Yeah, that's the question. And if I knew the answer to that, in the background would be waving palm trees. I would be at my villa in the Caribbean. I don't know. All these people who are collecting vinyl, are they going to be like, wow, this is a giant pain in the ass now that I have to move out of my apartment because now I have a kid or something? It's a that's the question. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and it kind of like some aspects, it's like, well, we kind of did this to ourselves. We want to make everything easy and convenient. And then there you have it on your phone that you can connect it to all these wireless speakers in your house. So you don't have to have a sound system like you used to, where you had big speakers and a big amplifier and the record player, the whole thing. So it's like, humans are never happy, right? Never. They're never happy. And there's always one that's like, I told you this would suck, and there's other people who argue the other side of it. But man, oh man, music is such an experience that there's feeling to it. And when, you listen to like an old record from the 60s and you listen to it because it was, it was in mono, right? And you listen to it on a record player that's mono, playing through speakers that are at that mono warm vibe. Man, there is something about that experience that you don't get at all on anything digital, even CDs for that matter, you know, not to that level. So like, did it start like, did this whole thing start with CDs, or did it start with, you know, or you know, going away from records in general? Like it seems like the music industry, like the movie industry right now, they just don't know what to do. They're just like trying everything.
I think people, I mean, it was just the industry just wanted new ways to empty your pockets.
Yeah.
And for a long time, they treated their customers like suckers. 1898 for a CD because you wanted one song, because you wanted to hear Who Let the Dogs Out, you know, or Tub Thumping, you
Oh
know.
yeah.
Uh, so when the technology arose that you could get this all for free, you could get every note of recorded music for free. Why not? I've eaten pizza out of dumpsters before. You know, if it's free, you're going to do it. But at some point, that is devaluing the art, and it just kept going. It seemed like that as a society, we're continually catching up with the technology, and I don't know where that goes. I think people for some time now have been discovering that there is precious little that if you have a hard drive or a cloud filled with 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 songs, that doesn't really say much about you. And there's really not any kind of tactile representation of your fandom
Mm-hmm.
or your interests, you know? So I think that people are coming back to physical media in movies, and, you know, the death of the independent bookstore has been greatly exaggerated. And,
Yeah.
you know, everyone was saying that record stores were going away. But if you have one in the neighborhood that's well curated and knows their audience, then these things will never really fully go away. But I guess the question is, will they exist on a level that is enough for artists to keep creating and to survive? Because we did a lot of projects that we couldn't do now, like compilations or thematic albums or uh, weird one-off collaborations, because we could sell a few thousand and they would break even or even make a little money. Now
Mm-hmm.
you can't do that, you know. And I also get that people resent, you know, all this record store day stuff where you go in and you buy a special limited edition $45 LP and you get it home and you're like, that's not that good. So, you know, that's where Spotify or things like that can provide a service. They can help create, if you are an active participant, they can help create a new generation of music fans and a new generation of artists. But if you just sit back and let the algorithm run things, we're just going to be regurgitating the same things. Why, when I go to bars, am I hearing the same fucking classic rock song? What do I need to hear Jack and Diane one more time? I do not. Where is the new music replacing this? You know, or are we just all being slopped at the same nostalgic trough? Oh,
Well,
that
it's
was
funny that
good.
you,
I gotta write that. Just write that.
yeah, well, this will be that's on record. Don't worry. Well, yeah, it's interesting you say that. Like with bars, I've noticed, like, because I'm old, right? Like I'm old school. I liked the notion of radio. I do. I don't like really what's on the radio anymore, but I like the notion of a free thing when a DJ like XRT is the closest thing to what radio used to be, right? They, you know, I don't know how much they pick their music now, each DJ versus whatever, but I will tell you that if you are driving anywhere in Chicago and you get to like the top of the hour and you go to certain radio stations, you know, like, so like say you're flipping from like Q101 to XRT to even the drive now, or even whatever 90 a WLS FM, sometimes you will hear the same song across all of them because they're using the same music scheduling software that is programmed the same way. And I'm like, how am I mean, I worked in radio years ago. That's where I started. And I remember thinking, like, I think it was called Selector is the name of the program that they used back in the day. And I'm like, well, if everybody's using Selector and putting the same kind of input in, and you have the same philosophy of like you play your powers at, you know, the top of the hour, then you play a, you know, one of your heritage songs, you know, before 10 minutes before the hour, like you're pulling the same 200 songs out of a library. That's essentially what Spotify's doing now, you
Mhm.
know. But that's what radio, like, it drives me nuts driving through the city and hearing the same song, and you'll hear it at different variations of the song. Like, you say you're on XRT and they're playing Jack and Diane, right? Then you flip over to CD94 or whatever it's called now, WLS FM, and it's the end of Jack and Diane because they just played it 2 minutes before you. And I'm like, how is that a thing? How is that? How are we so lazy to not demand more? Even the people working at the radio stations, like, how do you guys not want to play something different? Like, there's so much music out there, and John Mellencamp has many other songs that weren't the huge hits that Jack and Diane was, that are still good songs that if you probably have never even heard of them, though. It drives me nuts. I don't know.
Yeah. And if you were hit by a brick in that moment, wherever you are, if you're walking down the sidewalk and a piano falls on your head, a la Warner Brothers cartoons, and you regain consciousness, and you're still listening to this radio, you wouldn't have any idea what year it is.
No.
It could be 1984. It could be 1993. It's and that's what drove me to that was the great revelatory idea of punk for me when I was a kid. It was like I would listen to radio and I would just hear the same songs over and over again, and I thought that's what music was. I thought music was Stairway to Heaven, and I hated it. And I was like, okay, well, something's wrong with me, and this is what music is. And then when I started listening to late night radio shows on the left of the dial or on the far right of the dial in Detroit, that's where I discovered all this whole other world that existed. And that was the great moment of discovery, of realization that I didn't have to be stuck in this one little place, So
where is that now? Where is the far right side of the radio and far left side of the radio? Is that record stores basically now?
Probably record stores, but there's lots of internet radio stations out there and podcasts. And I mean, I do a radio show. Yeah. I do a low wattage station radio show that streams worldwide. And, there are people out there. You just got to find them. It's a little bit hard. You can't just turn on the radio in the car and have something, but you never really could, So this low wattage station I work at, have a couple of shows on. I went to Australia a few years ago and ran into a bunch of fans of it.
No,
and they were discovering weird old R&B and blues and stuff that I was playing, and they were like, "Yeah, I love your show." So it does still exist. You just got to maybe be a little more proactive about it as a consumer of art. And I would suggest that we should all be more proactive anyway with that, and not just kind of lazily accept what's shoved down our throats.
Amen. I have every night before, like when we're making dinner, I have like an old Motorola. It's this big box, this Drexel wood box Motorola stereo, where it's got a turntable and an AM and FM, like wheels like this, or dials like this big. And you turn it on and it's got the, the little hum, and it's got this, the spindle where you can stack like, 6 or 7 records on it. And that is our dinner routine, our making dinner. And it's got to be something we didn't listen to the day before. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that is how we've curated our record collection. We'll go out, and my wife, she loves like hard rock. But she's rediscovered like the classic rock years, not necessarily just the classic rock, some bands that were big, but the other bands. And you were talking about like soul music. I'll go into a record store and look for soul bands that or R&B, or even like stuff that was Motown but not Motown, and you're just like, man, how come I've never heard of this? This never was played on the radio. And then there's clubs all over the city. Like there's the Heart of Soul, Rock and Soul. I can't think of the name of there's a soul club where they like set up shop all over the city, and they'll play like soul music, and people are dancing at the club. Like I took my wife there for Valentine's Day because we just were like, I just want to do like, that's what my parents did, or that's what my grandparents did. Like they would go to like clubs and dance, even as their older years. It wasn't just like a nightclub thing for 20-year-olds. So that was our way of discovering music. And I imagine you do other things. Sounds like you dive through record stores. I mean, what is a guy that ran a label? Where do you find your music? Where you find, or even in the old music?
I mean, what I've been doing since my time at the label ended, I've been kind of rediscovering my own record collection, things that I've just accumulated over the years, but never really had a chance to really sit with because I was so busy in my own cave and so busy promoting and listening to everything we were releasing. So I'm finding, like this Icontina record, I hadn't listened to it in 25 years. Nuff Said from 1971 on United Artists Records.
Yeah.
And it just blows my mind. And like I'm finding how much I love the Kinks. And it turns out Fugazi's a really good band. Like there's things I
Yeah.
miss because I was in my cave working it. So that's kind of what I'm doing. It's just like going to my shelf and just randomly sticking my hand in it and finding something that I hadn't listened to in a long time. So
And then you taking that and playing it on your record show? What
sometimes,
station?
yeah. It's WRHC, Radio Harbor Country in Southwest Michigan. It's radioharborcountry.org, and it's mostly just an extension of what my record collection is in terms of weird and underknown roots music in whatever form that takes. Advocating for those bands that kind of influenced me and what I wanted to do with Bloodshot. Because everyone kind of, sometimes people would be, wow, you invented this thing. And I was like, no, we just maybe kind of reinvigorated it and repackaged it a bit and gave a little more freedom to some people. But, there was the Cramps, there was the Gun Club, the Blasters, Panther Burns, things, going back, things like that. And, then other bands that influenced me, like that I ended up getting to work with, like X or Graham Parker, or Barons Whitfield and the Savages, or Dex Romweber and the Flat Duo Jets. So it was just kind of playing around with that.
That's fun. That's
it's you get to play your record collection, which is it's a blast.
Yeah,
And
not many people have the chance to do it.
Or you get to advocate for these bands and these labels that most people haven't heard of, even though they might know something a little bit about them. Or in the case of somebody like the Flat Duo Jets, like they never sold any records, but like they were a direct influence on people like Jack White and White Stripes and how they did. So it's like there's this undercurrent of weirdos and no-hit wonders running through American music that even if we don't know we're influenced by it, we are.
And that's the beauty of it, right? The beauty of music, you go down a rabbit hole, there's no end to it. Like you just keep going, you find another one and you find another one, especially if you dig, there's record stores and then there are record stores. The record store that opened 2 years ago is not like the record store that's been open for 50 years. You know what I mean? Like where they...
That's true. But the guy who just opened up, and I'm assuming it's a guy, sorry, the guy or the woman who,
Sure.
who opened that, they're doing it because they love it.
True.
You're not opening up a little record store or a neighborhood bookstore or a mom and pop diner or stuff like that. You're not doing that to get rich. You're doing it because there's something about that really speaks to you. And so I would say that guy that's been there for 2 years is just as important as that guy who's been there for 50, because they're going to have totally different perspectives on things. I remember once we had one of our publicists, I would walk through the room for several days walking back, I'd be going back to the warehouse or something. And she was always playing John Lee Hooker. And I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. And she was, I don't know, 15 years younger than me. And at some point I was like, hey, what's up with the John Lee Hooker? And she's like, have you heard of this guy? He's amazing. And I'm like, oh, yes, I have. And that's that continuum of discovery that is just so vital to keeping the art form alive.
It's funny that you say that. Have you ever been to Out of the Past Records in West Garfield Park?
I have not.
It is an old record store, about 40, I think it's 40 years old, but the woman that runs it currently, she's probably in her 70s. She ran it with her husband, and they had record stores all over the west side of Chicago, all over. And Out of the Past is the last one, so they consolidated.
Oh, yeah, I read about that on Block Club, I think.
Yeah, and I did a story there, and I found a John Lee Hooker album just sitting there. And the great thing about that place is that their records, yes, they have like new ones that are, like a Taylor Swift album or whatever, stuff like that for Record Store Day. But then you go through their stacks, they might have a record that is still in its original shrink wrappage, right? That is from 30 years ago, because that's how big their collection was when they had like 10 stores. So over
Mhm.
the years, they've closed the stores and they've just put all of their collection in one spot. So they are constantly going like at the record store is, I mean, it's a there's dust, you know, it's an old record store, but it used to be an old car dealership, but like in the city in the 40s. So it's not like what you think of a car dealership today. It's more of a storefront, but it goes forever back. But they close off part of it so you can't get back there. But the her granddaughter runs it. And I remember when she like walked out of this door, she had like a stack of records, and you're looking at it and you're like it was like if it was 1975 and it was the Tuesday of the new release records. And that's what she was putting on the shelf. And one of them was like a John Lee Hooker record. And I was like, I'm gonna, yeah, I don't care how much it costs because like that was just I loved it, and that what that story reminded me of, because that place is a gem, and they're running it because it to them it means everything to them about being in their community, giving West Garfield Park something other than a bad name, you know, for you know what's happened in the neighborhood. Like they're like, no, man, like the people here are great, and and we get people from they were talking they get people from all over the world that come there because they've heard about their collection, and it's not anything that they boast about. It's just kind of known, you know. It's
Mhm.
just it's bizarre, but that is the beauty of record stores and music and everything we've talked about this afternoon. And I appreciate you sharing some stories, as you talked about like Spotify and the way the music industry changes. Was that with all of that, were you like, yeah, I'm good, you know, like I'm good walking away from this record business thing?
Well, to the extent I walked away and wasn't,
Yeah, well, you
bum
know,
rushed out the door, but uh, if I were still doing it, yeah, I don't know how people carry on with it. It's even harder than before.
yeah.
So hats off to anyone. It's a lot of the times in the book, in some ways, is kind of a scared straight tale. Like,
Hmm.
here's 1,000 reasons why you shouldn't do this. You're an idiot if you go into it to make money. And if at the end of that, a person puts the book down or listens to what I used to say when I would do lectures at universities and stuff, if at the end of that they go, well, that guy's full of shit, I can figure it out. That's exactly the person that needs to do the next label. And
Yeah.
they'll figure it out. Or they won't, but they'll try. And they will believe in it strongly enough to keep trying to figure out a way.
Right, because that's kind of music, right? In the end, it always finds people somehow, some way, eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes right away, sometimes eventually. But your story, where I had your book and now, oh, here it is. The long, the hours are long and the pay is low, right here. And I'll put another nicer graphic up. But Rob, are you speaking about the book anytime soon? I know that it came out last year. I'm a little late to the party in talking to you, but do you have any or people can follow what you're doing now or listening to your show on the radio station?
Yes, absolutely. You can go to robmillerwriting.com. That would be the best place. I just, uh, you say you're late to the game, but the book came out at the end of November last year. So, when we put out records, we always looked at it with the long view. We didn't think of it as like, oh, we have 3 months to convince people. It was like, you just keep plugging away at it and it finds its audience. So I'm doing 6 or 7 events in Michigan in June and July. The dates are up there. I'm going down to Dex Fest in Chapel Hill at the end of July, end of June. I just booked a date at Third Man Records in Detroit. There's some Jack White connections and my connection to Detroit there. And I'll just keep, as long as people want to hear good stories or why they shouldn't do this or why we need to not take independent communities and artists, whatever form they take, be it music, writing, food, photography, theater, we can't take independent arts communities for granted. We need to keep supporting them. So if people want to talk about that, I'm there for them, and I'll keep doing it until people stop showing up.
Yeah, amen to that. If we don't support the independent arts, I feel like we lose our soul as a human race because
Yeah, because then everything will be Walmart, and
AI.
where's the fun in that?
No, no fun whatsoever. Rob Miller, thank you so much for taking time to chat with me. When are you on the radio next?
The show is every Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern time.
Amazing. Well, we look forward to listening then, sir.
All right. Thank you very much for for giving a shit.